Hello and welcome to the College Football Breakdown Show. I'm going to break down the 4-game slate on Friday for DraftKings. We'll have a video coming out hopefully later today and an article about the main slate on Saturday. But there's a pretty interesting Friday slate here I want to cover. We have 4 games, 3 conference championships, and then a complete dud. For some reason they threw Nebraska and Rutgers in here, so we have that as well. 2 games that are totaled over 60 with Oregon, USC, and then Ball State, Buffalo. And then 2 lower scoring games. UAB Marshall should be pretty lower scoring, and Nebraska and Rutgers is expected to be somewhere in the middle there. So let's break it down. Let's start with UAB Marshall in the Conference USA Conference Championship. For UAB, they're going to be without their best player in this one, Austin Watkins Jr. Without him, that should mean Myron Mitchell is the top guy. His workload hasn't been great. You can see right there he's at 4.6K. And he's pretty talented, to be honest with you. He was returning kicks earlier in the year. Not sure if he still is, but he's talented. I could see him having a decent game here. The issue is they're going against a Marshall team that has the number 2 rush defense, allowing only 73 yards per game and 2.4 yards per carry. And the defense as a whole, they're only allowing 11 points per game. So I really don't think UAB is going to score much in this one. I did take Marshall minus 5.5. They have won all 6 games they've hosted for the Conference USA title, which is the case here. And they're 5-0 when hosting UAB. So I definitely like Marshall. I don't think UAB is going to score that much. I just don't really see, if they're not able to run the ball, that's what they want to do, and their passing game has just been anemic, and they lost by far their best playmaker. So not really sure how I feel about that. If you're looking for a cheap option at wide receiver, I might play some of Shropshire down here, way down at 3.2. I think he's a punt play. Possibly he saw 6 targets a week ago. Other than that, is the running back room. Like I said, they're facing the best rush D. I don't know why you would pay up for Spencer Brown. Him and McBride, their top 2 rushers, both missed due to COVID testing last week. They should be back. So just really not much interest there at all. If Brown were to miss, McBride at 5.5, I guess it's possible he might make my lineups, but not something you want to target here. Okay, Marshall. When we're looking at them and how they stack up against UAB's defense, UAB does have a pretty good defense as well. They're more beatable on the ground, however. They're allowing 138 yards per game and 3.9 yards per carry, so that's not bad at all. So beatable, as in they're okay. But their passing D is really good. They allow only 180 passing yards per game. So not much interest in the passing game for Marshall, except for the guys I'll mention. As far as the running backs, Brandon Knox is basically their offense at 6.2K. You can see here he had 2 games over 20 points in a row, and then his last 2 he has like 8 points, 9 points. It hasn't been great, and their offense really hasn't been great at all. I'm a little bit concerned. I think this will be a low-scoring game in general. I think Knox is okay in a game that they're supposed to win, that I think they'll win. So we should get plenty of attempts, and it's not a great matchup. It's okay. They did lose 20-0 to Rice. That has to be mentioned last week out, and it was just an abysmal performance. I would think they rebound here. I mean, I'm betting them, so I think they rebound, but it's just really it's really dicey overall in this game. As far as the wide receivers, Gamage is going to be your top guy. He has 15 targets in the last 2 games. Other than that, I mean, I'm not paying up for him. We have this guy, Keaton, at 3.7. He had 11 targets last game, came out of nowhere. His production on the year really isn't anything, but if he sees 11 targets again, decent punt play. The guy I will be targeting if I have to, and to save salary. So the way I'm going to construct my lineups, I'll probably need some salary savers. And Xavier Gaines, I think, is going to be the guy for me. He's their tight end. His workload is okay. It's gone down a little bit. He has 4 targets in each of his last 2 games. I do think he's one of the better tight ends in college football. Former quarterback, pretty athletic guy. I would not be surprised if he caught a touchdown here, so I'll probably have a decent amount of him at 3.7. As far as Knox. So he has 820 yards on the year and 9 touchdowns, and that's good. Those are both top 25 nationally, so he's a pretty solid back. I think the price is a little bit too cheap. All right, Ball State versus Buffalo. This is probably a game that you're going to want some ownership in. The total's at 67.5. As far as betting, I can't pick a side in this one. I do think Buffalo's the better team. They are 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 games. But I don't know, man. It's the MAC Conference Championship game, or I guess MAC conferences. Repetitive, but the MAC Championship games. The MAC is weird, man. Weird things happen. The better team, it seems like, doesn't usually win, so there's no way I'm betting it. I do think Buffalo probably wins, though. I do think they are the better team, but I don't really know if it's by much. When you're looking at what they've done, keep in mind, I think they've only played 5 games. Maybe it's 6. I think it's 5 games. They've played 2 0-6 teams, Northern Illinois and Bowling Green, 2 really bad teams, and then they played Akron, who's a 1-win team, and I believe their only win is against Bowling Green. So their schedule's been an absolute cakewalk, man. I wouldn't expect Buffalo to come out here and put up 55 points. If they do, I'll be extremely impressed, but that seems to be what some people are expecting. And take a look at the schedule. That just shows that they haven't looked at the schedule, in my opinion, which is tough for me to say because I'm a Buffalo fan. I'm a big Lance Leipold fan. I hope he gets a job elsewhere as well. Anyway, and Ball State is 6-0 against the spread as an underdog, and they can score points. With a 2-touchdown underdog for a team that can score points, that's not for me. I don't know if it's strong enough for me to bet Ball State, though. Okay, so when looking at Ball State, they do average 33.7 yards per game, which is pretty good, and they're pretty balanced. They can throw, they can pass. Buffalo on defense is allowing 160 rushing yards per game and 4.1 yards per carry. So I think you're going to be interested in Ball State's rushing attack. Their star running back, Caleb Huntley, has opted out. We're now left with a timeshare. I wish we had more clarity because I'd probably be 100% owned if we had more clarity. But unfortunately, we have a timeshare between Ty Evans and Will Jones. Ty Evans seemed like he was the guy, and he's been more productive. And then last game, he got half the carries. He had 8, whereas Jones had 16. But I still think he could be productive in this matchup. I'm probably going to have either one of Evans or Jones in my lineup. I wish I could tell you which guy. I guess Jones got more carries last game. But it's really tough, and it's really tough. You're kind of just picking from a hat. As far as the passing game, I'm not sure how much Drew Plitt I will own in a game that has that high of a total. They're supposed to be playing from behind. Maybe I'll get there. I certainly think you could do worse. These MAC games are just crazy, man. They've been flying over the totals, so while I don't really think this one goes over, it's the MAC, man. Nothing would surprise me. I am a little worried that their offensive line does seem to struggle a little bit in passing protection from what I've seen. And they're going against this Buffalo team that's the whole strength of their defense is their D-line is nasty, man. So I think they're going to bother Plitt a little bit. But with volume and possibly playing from behind, game script, it may not matter. As far as the wide receivers, Justin Hall is your top guy. I believe he's top 5 in the whole country in scrimmage yards per game at 7.2. He's fine. I don't know if I can get there. I'll probably be paying up for other people, but Hall is fine. And then behind him, you have Johannes Tyler and Anton Davis, and these guys are both fine, man. They both had really good years. Tyler gets more touchdowns. They see about equal volume, so I would think Tyler probably has the higher upside, and honestly probably is a little bit safer too. But Anton Davis, man, this guy sees a lot of carries a lot of targets as well, and he does get a decent amount of yards as you see there. So I think either one of these guys as a lineup filler, they're really not too expensive at all. All right. As far as Buffalo, they are leading the nation in scoring, 51.8 points per game. And they also lead the country in rushing yards at 344.2 yards per contest. So you have to look at them here. You have to pick your spots here. They're going against the Ball State team that has the 90th ranked defense, allowing 432 yards per game. They are a little bit better against the run, which makes this interesting. 147.8 yards per game and 3.9 yards per rush on the ground. So not great, but decent. When they played Toledo, they did hold Bryant Koback in check a little bit. He had a worse game than he usually does, so that's worth monitoring here with Jarrett Patterson on Buffalo. But they're really bad against the pass, man. 284 passing yards per game. Okay, we're back. So Jarrett Patterson is just an absolute beast. If you don't know who he is by now, 300-yard games, 400-yard games, just take a look at the game log. There's a chance he gets you 91 points. I don't really know if there's a big chance of that happening here, but I'm definitely, that's the big decision to make in this slate is whether to pay Jarrett Patterson or not. I do think there are some decent cheap wide receivers, so I'll probably have a decent amount of Jarrett Patterson. I don't really know if he's an absolute 100% lock, just because he's so expensive, but he's pretty darn good, man. I mean, to put it mildly. I feel like if you don't have him in a 4-game slate, it's just really, really playing with fire. Behind him, Kevin Marks Jr. at 6.9 had some nice success playing him this year. Just like I did last year, man. People don't seem to realize that there's 2 fantasy-relevant running backs in this offense. Finally seems like they are. The price is pretty high here at 6.9, so that's hard for me to get to be honest with you. I'm not sure how much I'll have. But he does have 510 yards and 5 scores on the year, and that's in only 5 games. He's averaging 7.5 yards per carry. So if you're fading Patterson, having Marks isn't a bad idea if you're trying to get some leverage. As far as the wide receivers go, like I mentioned, Ball State can't stop the pass at all, man. So if they do a better job against the run than some people are expecting, and I think Antonio Nunn is a fine play. I think regardless, Antonio Nunn at 5.1 is a fine play. He doesn't see a lot of volume, but he's a really good wide receiver. Him and Patterson, I guess Marks is pretty good too, but man, Nunn's a really good football player in my opinion. He always stands out, especially for a team that doesn't throw the ball much. Last game, they didn't pass the ball at all because they didn't have to, so the targets are a little bit skewed. But before that, he was seeing about 6+ targets per game, which again is decent, but I think if he gets 6 targets in this game, man, I think he's probably going to do a little bit of damage. I don't know what the upside is with how little they pass, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if he caught 2 touchdowns. I wouldn't be shocked, but with that low volume, man, he's going to have to be really efficient. So it's a dicey game, but I do think the price is right. I think the price is pretty good, so I'll play a decent amount of him. Behind him, the guy I would look to is Ruiz. Where's he at? Giovanni Ruiz at 3.6. I think he's a little bit too cheap. He has seen 10 targets over his last 2 games, and like I mentioned, they hardly threw the ball in one of those games. So I think he's their second guy in this offense now. Other than that, Lefevre, their tight end, could he catch a touchdown? Sure, but he's done nothing lately, and the targets really aren't there. All right, Nebraska versus Rutgers. I don't know why this game's on the slate. I guess there's 4 games, so I might as well throw it in there, but this one's ugly, man. I don't really know. This is one of those games where who knows what the motivation is, right? With these other teams, it's a conference championship. We don't have to question things like that. With this one, we do. Probably for both teams. I think especially with Nebraska. It's worth mentioning, they had a guy on their offensive line. I think he's supposed to be their best offensive lineman. Or if not, certainly one of them. He's had 40 consecutive starts for Nebraska. And he opted out for this game. If he's opting out and he's had 40 consecutive starts, what does that say about this team, where they're at, how motivated they are? How motivated can you get? Why are you playing this game? It's going to be difficult. You know, I think obviously Scott Frost wants to build momentum going into next year because somehow people always seem to be hyping him up and giving him momentum when they never really do anything. But alas. They did lose last week to Minnesota, and Minnesota was down 33 players on their roster, and they still beat Nebraska. So I don't know about Nebraska, man. All 3 of Rutgers' wins have come on the road this year, and they're on the road here, so that's worth mentioning. All right, as far as offensively, I'm mildly interested in a few pieces on Nebraska. I'm not going to be playing this game very much as a whole because who knows what's going on. Adrian Martinez at 7.3. I mean, he's a dual-threat quarterback, and he's really come on as of late. So anytime you get a dual-threat guy on a slate like this where there's minimal options, I'll probably play some Adrian Martinez. Rutgers' defense is not good. They're ranked number 88 in the country. They allow 430 yards per game and 6.1 yards per play, and they're bad against both the pass and the rush, which both of those lend to Martinez. As far as the running back room, Dedrick Mills, you know, against this bad Rutgers defense, there's a chance he has a decent game. I'm not crossing him off, but the workload's really not great. Wan'Dale Robinson and the quarterback siphon off carries. So it's tough to trust him, but he's a decent player, and he can certainly go for 80 yards and a touchdown here. Nobody would be surprised at all. So he's going to be in the player pool. Wan'Dale Robinson's their top wide receiver. You know him by now. Gets a decent amount of carries. Gets work in the passing game and is playing against a bad defense. So at 6.4, that's going to be tough the way I'm building most of these lineups, but Wan'Dale's certainly in play. Behind that, it's a crapshoot. If I really had to take a punt, I would take it on Xavier Betts. The freshman wide receiver gets almost no volume, but he's a deep play guy. He can take one to the house if he gets a chance. All right, as far as Rutgers, worth mentioning, surprisingly, to me at least, they play at the 14th highest pace in the nation, 75.8 plays per game. Worth noticing how much better their offense has been this year. They are averaging 350 yards of total offense, which doesn't seem like much perhaps, but it's 141.1 more yards per game than what they had in Big Ten games last year. 141 yards per game improvement year over year. They've scored 219 points in 8 games, whereas last year they only scored 51 in 9 conference games. So 219 in 8 to 51 in 9. Bo Melton is the top guy at the wide receiving position at 6.8K. He has 9 touchdowns this year. So certainly interested there. Isaiah Pacheco on the ground. I will have some interest in Pacheco. He had 18 rushes and 5 targets last game. Was a pretty nice punt play there. I think he was 4.3. Priced, pretty much everybody was on him, but he came through. He had 22 points. He gets a decent matchup here. Nebraska's not terrible. They're not great. Not really in any category either. They're just kind of, I guess, below average everywhere. They allow 175 rush yards per game at 4.2 yards per carry. I think the safest way to attack it is probably with Pacheco in this matchup. Melton, I'm not sure I'm going to get there, but he's definitely the top option. Shameen Jones was my punt play last week, and he didn't do much. He was okay, but his price really took a jump at $5,000. I'm not sure I'm super interested there. Him and Crookshank. I think Crookshank, just because he's cheaper, I'll probably find my way into a few lineups. I did see 11 targets last game, and he's been decently, consistent receiving targets, and he hasn't done anything with them, so I don't want too much of him, but the volume's there for 4K. Kind of buried the lead here. We don't know what's going on at quarterback with Rutgers. Noah Vedral, he's actually a Nebraska transfer. He actually used to play on the basketball team as well at Nebraska, but now he's playing against them. But he got hurt last game. He injured an ankle, I believe it was, and his primary intrigue, if there is any, with him comes due to his dual threat ability, which I think would be limited by the ankle. So if he plays, I think it might be ugly. He was absolutely awful last week. If you watched that game or any of it, I tried not to, but seeing some of the highlights, there were no highlights, basically. It just wasn't good at all. So if Sikowski plays, if it's confirmed Vedral's out at 5.7, where it's difficult to fit in pricing, he's okay. He's been better throwing the ball than Vedral has, but I guess he's worth mentioning. It's about all I could say. Vedral has 9 touchdowns to 8 interceptions on the year, so it's not like they'd be missing much there. Okay. Oregon against USC, Pac-12 championship game. I actually just previewed this game in detail. I'll post a link to the article down there. So I took a deep dive in there, so I'm not going to go over everything for a second time here. But this is a game I'll have a lot of ownership interest in. I'm an Oregon fan, so I usually make it out to the Pac-12 championship game at Levi Stadium. This one's not being played at Levi Stadium. It was supposed to be played at Allegiant Stadium, where the Raiders play in Vegas, but it was moved for COVID. Somehow it's in Southern California. So USC gets a home game here. I did take the over at 62.5. I'm assuming that's going to keep rising until game time since it's a Friday night Pac-12 game. But I'm interested, man. I think this is going to be, hopefully it's a back and forth game. Both of these teams have played some pretty close games. They've both been very inconsistent, and their defenses are both beatable. Oregon's defense has really taken a huge step back. They are more vulnerable against the run, and USC can't run at all. I think they're averaging 3.5 yards per carry on the season. It's just not good. And their starting running back, Vincent Malapei, or Valvi Malapei, whatever his first name is, he's going to be out for this game, but they kind of rotate back, so I'm not sure how much that's going to affect them. I'll start with USC since I'm on their running backs. So yeah, he's doubtful. I don't think he's going to play. That means you have a pump play option here with their running backs going, high total. It's really difficult for me to say which one. I think since Carr is cheaper, I might play Carr at 3.2. He had 7 carries, 2 steps, 1 last week. Now, I don't know if you can perfectly forecast that based on last week, because Carr would probably more step into Malapei's role. I think he'd probably get more goal line work. He's a bigger back. He does average 4.4 yards per carry on the season to Carr's 4.0, so he's been slightly more effective, whereas Carr does see slightly more receiving work. If I had to guess, I'd say Carr probably gets slightly more volume, and he's more safe in the passing game, so I think he's a safer play at 3.2. I'll probably have a decent amount of him to fit in the studs in this slate. But I think both of them are fine. Perhaps Stepp has higher upside since I think he'd probably get more goal line looks. Other than that, I mean, I guess it's worth mentioning Keenan Kristen. I'm a big fan of his, but he gets absolutely no work. He's a track star. In a matchup like this, I could just see him taking a screen pass to the house, but it kind of reminds me of the Chris Tyree pump plays I've had. Most of them haven't hit. They've hit a few weeks, and it's been great. They like to rotate 3 backs, and now he's a 3rd back, so maybe. All right, at quarterback, Keaton Slovis made me a lot of money last year, and then when he's been on the slate this year, he hasn't been great for me, but he's really come on lately. He has 5 touchdowns in each of his last 2 games, 10 touchdowns there. I'm going to have significant ownership interest, man. Oregon's been beatable everywhere defensively, which has been a surprise to most of us. Maybe they tighten it up, but we just haven't seen it yet. So forecasting something we haven't seen is pretty hard to do. As far as the wide receivers go, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the priciest option, and that is for good reason. He had 4 touchdowns in the first quarter against Washington State. He has 23 targets in his last 2 games. In that span, Bonds has 19, and London has 13. So St. Brown has 10 more targets in the last 2 games alone than Drake London. That's the reason there's a big price difference. He should be that much higher, in my opinion. Since London has been seeing the least amount of targets between these 3, he'll probably be pretty high owned since he's the cheapest one. But, I mean, it's hard not to. Getting a guy like Drake London at 5.9, like if you didn't see that highlight of him breaking like 7 tackles against UCLA, he's a beast. Teams have trouble tackling him, and his production's been way, way, way outpacing Vaughn's with less. He's been way more efficient, with less targets. I think Vaughn's is fine too. He's really come on as of late. Like I said, he's been seeing a ton of targets as well. Other than that, anybody behind them, I think if you're going to a cheaper guy, Brew McCoy would be your guy. He saw a few targets per game early on in the year, and those have really dried up. He hasn't really seen almost any targets in the last few games. But if you're looking for a punt, that would be your guy. He is very talented, so perhaps it could happen for him. As far as quarterback, I'm going to be playing a decent amount of Tyler Shuck. He is a hard quarterback to forecast. As a Ducks fan, I watch pretty much all their games, wire to wire, start to finish. He's difficult. He's been very, very good for most of the year, so I don't want to take too much away from him. I will play a decent amount of Shuck. He has a dual threat ability as well, which you'd love to see, especially since the running backs haven't really been going off this year. Shuck's been big in the run game for them. He's not exactly somebody I 100% trust. This is going to be the biggest game of his career. He's had some big games. He has a great offensive coordinator in Joe Moorhead, which is what I most like about him. But I feel like, and again, I can't back this up. I don't exactly have specific examples off the top of my head, but Joe Moorhead's offense seems like in a big game, sometimes they shut down a little bit. They can look great. They can play with pace if they want to or slow it down. They adjust, but sometimes they've just met their match and haven't been great. But this is a Pac-12 game. This isn't him at Penn State. It's not Mississippi State. He's playing USC's defense. You can score on USC's defense. USC's defense's numbers were better than I expected when I looked into it. I think they're only allowing 25 points per game. I thought it would be a lot more. So, long story short, I think Shuck is a pretty good play, but I'm not 100% confident in it. I will probably own a lot of him anyway. One reason why it's just tricky is stacking with an Oregon wide receiver. It's not great. They're just really hard to forecast. They have been forever. It sounds like Devin Williams is coming back for their next game. He really came on as of late. He did see 15 targets in the last 2 games that he's played in. But it seems like at least 1 or 2 of their wide receivers have kind of been out. They haven't really been playing all at the same time. We think they're all going to be playing at the same time. Their top 4 being Williams, Red, Johnson, and Micah Pittman. Red has 15 targets over his last 2. This guy's the screen pass GOAT if you haven't seen him. But, the likelihood of a 100-yard game bonus isn't really there. He's going to have to be very efficient and probably break a screen pass touchdown with, which, hey, nobody would be surprised. It's a decent price there for Red. I think Johnson might be their best wide receiver. It seems like he's been around forever. He's kind of a big game player. He had some very big catches in the game last year against Utah. But the volume really hasn't been great. it's just really hard to know who to trust here. I would say these prices are probably about right. Devin Williams, I mean, he's had 2 good games, but that's all we've seen from him. So, again, not really a guy you can trust. And who knows if Micah Pittman mixes in there, because he's a pretty damn good wide receiver as well. So I think they're going to be rotating a little bit. So long story short, it's really hard to trust. Now, Spencer Webb, this guy's a monster. Jump ball extraordinaire, tight end. Their tight ends have been a mess, a complete mess. They've had like 5 different ones rotating in. They keep coming back, not coming back. It's been a mess. Webb has been one of those guys. He's supposed to play against USC. I don't know exactly how much I can trust because every single week it feels like we're dealing with something else. But we have some pretty strong news here that he's supposed to play. And with their other tight ends being up in the air, Camp Moyer had some big games and then just hasn't seen anything. Same with DJ Johnson, who I believe used to be a defensive player. Spencer Webb has a punt play. This guy's a red zone monster. Herbert loved going to him in the red zone. I don't know if Shuck's the same way because they haven't played together. Sounds like Cam McCormick, their other tight end, is not going to come back, but Spencer Webb is. So if you need a punt play all the way down at min price, you could do worse for a guy who, if they get to the red zone, I would imagine he sees at least 1 red zone target. I would be surprised if he didn't, the fact that he's suited up. But at the same time, he hasn't played all year, so who knows what the hell we're going to expect. He's probably not at 100%. And they've been really hush-hush on what exactly is going on with him. All right, as far as lineup construction, I mean, I'm definitely looking to play Slovis in this one. I'd probably start with Slovis and Jarrett Patterson, which is really expensive, I know. Probably most lineups, if I could fit Shuck in there, so that's one way I could go with this. I could then stack Shuck and have a game stack here, or I could go alternative. And I realized I didn't talk about Marshall's quarterback, Grant Wells. He's been really hit or miss, and like I said, he's playing a good pass defense. He's had some big games, so he's worth mentioning, but I'm not really looking to target that passing attack. Okay, anyway, you could go Shuck there, or you could opt with Plitt or Martinez. Most of my lineups will probably have Slovis, but those are the 4 I'll be playing. Probably Shuck and Slovis. We've been 2 most owned, so if you're going with Patterson, obviously that makes everything else difficult, but there are some cheap options. If you're going to pay down at running back, like take a Ball State guy or take Stephen Carr. You could even take both. From there, you have a lot of options, right? You could go. It really just depends on which wide receivers. I think I'm not going to hone in on a few wide receivers because I like all the guys I mentioned. I think are fine. Wandale's fine. Melton's fine. Hall's fine. St. Brown's fine. I'm probably not going to be able to pay up that much for all of them. So you could do something like London, none, and then figure out where you want to go for there. Do you want to pay down for a Ball State guy and then pay up for your other wide receiver? You're left with a few options. So that's kind of where I'm going to be attacking it. I think I have enough cheap plays where I can fit Patterson and then 2 good quarterbacks. But that's up to you where you're going to have to make that decision. Personally, that's probably what I'm going to be doing in most lineups. All right, fellas, that's all I had. Thank you for tuning in. I will be back tonight with the breakdown for the Saturday slate if you're interested in that. And then the article should be coming out tonight or tomorrow morning as well. I'm not sure what's going to be going on with bowl season, but I don't know. I'm covering college football, so we'll see. I also have some stuff in play for college basketball. I just haven't been able. I don't have enough time to do the college football and that at the same time. But I've started getting into prize picks. I'm off to an 8-0 start. I'll try to start posting those on Twitter if nothing else. Breakdown videos for basketball. We'll see with timing. I think that's around the corner. I'm planning that. I still have some work to do, getting the model together and everything. But if you're interested in that, and if you're wondering why I made one video and haven't made one since, it's in the pipeline, as they say. So thanks for watching, and best of luck this week.